Hello good people, welcome again to my channel. Today's lesson shall be wildlife and tourism. I'm still yours, Mr. Charles Kariuki. Kindly hit the subscribe button at the far bottom right of the video, and I trust that you shall enjoy today's lesson. Welcome. Now, in this topic, we shall be looking at definition of terms. We shall define what wildlife is. Later we shall define what tourism is as well. We shall look at the factors that influence the distribution of wildlife in the East African region. Then we'll go specifically to tourism, which will form the bulk of our lesson. In tourism, we shall be looking at factors that influence tourism in Kenya. We shall be looking at the major tourist attractions in Kenya, both the coastal and the inland attractions. Then we look at the significance of tourism in Kenya. Then we look at the problems facing tourism, and we look at the problems that are associated with tourism. And finally, we look at our case study. Our case study shall be tourism in Kenya and tourism in the Switzerland. So to begin with, we shall define the term wildlife. Now, wildlife refers to all forms of undomesticated flora and fauna. Flora here referring to plants, and the fauna referring to animals in their natural habitats. So every student moving forward should be aware that when we are discussing wildlife, we are not talking about animals. Rather, we are discussing about both animals and plants that are undomesticated and that are in their natural habitats. That is what wildlife is. Now, what factors influence distribution of wildlife in the East African region? Now, it should be noted that we do not have a uniform or a homogeneous kind of distribution of animals in any country or even in the East African region. We have some more areas that have more wildlife. We have some areas that have less of the wildlife because of the factors that we shall look at in this section. One is about climate. Now, just a recap before we discuss about this. Students should note that one of the terms that we do not encourage using in geography is climate. We are not saying that you don't use the term climate, but climate is a general term referring to many weather elements. There should be around 9 weather elements. So when you are discussing climate, remember to be specific on what element of climate that you are talking about, because it is not all the forms of weather elements that will favor something. Mainly we are being specific to rainfall, to temperatures, to humidity and such. So climate will influence the distribution of wildlife in two ways. One, areas that receive heavy or high rainfall. High is the right term. Areas that receive high rainfall will tend to be forested, and forested areas will attract some kind of animals. Heavy browsers like elephants and buffaloes. These are animals that eat a lot of foliage, so they will need to be in areas that are heavily forested. So you will find these kind of animals in areas that receive high rainfall and therefore have large forests. Number 2 is that arid and semi-arid conditions will only favor hardy animals. Not all manner of animals will tend to survive in such areas, and even plants. It's only plants and animals that are adapted to harsh conditions of low rainfall and high temperatures that will tend to survive in such areas. And we have given 2 examples there of the hartebeest and the gerenak. Those are animals that can survive in these areas. Otherwise, not many species of animals or plants will tend to survive in these conditions. They must be adapted to these conditions. Number 2 is about relief. Relief is the general appearance of the land. Is it hilly? Is it mountainous? Does it have valleys? Is it rugged or undulating? That's what we refer to as relief. So in relief, we talk about aspect. Aspect is the orientation of a slope in relation to sunlight. Now, areas or windward slopes of mountains will tend to receive high rainfall. They will also tend to have high temperatures or direct sunlight, and therefore they will tend to be forested. If you look at Mount Kenya, on the side of Meru, we have the big forest there because of it is on the windward slope of Mount Kenya. Now you will find animals like elephants there because of the thick forest, because they are big browsers, as we have said earlier. Now, areas that have undulating landscape again will tend to favor hunters. Animals like cheetahs, lions, these are animals that need speed for survival. They hunt. Now, you don't expect them to be hunting in mountainous regions, in regions that are rugged. They need a flat terrain to run fast and hunt. That's why you'll find them in areas like the Masai Mara, which is a relatively a plain land, because they are able to hunt effectively in such areas. Number 3, it's about soils. Soils will favor vegetation, in that deep and well-drained soils will tend to favor the growth of thick forest. And these thick forests again will attract animals like elephants and buffaloes and the rest of the animals, gazelles, which are browsers. Now, areas that have shallow soils that are also poorly drained will tend to favor grasslands, because grasses don't have deep roots, so they will do well in shallow soils. And in areas of grasslands, then again, they will attract some kind of animals that eat grass, zebras, name them, wild beasts. That's why you'll find them a lot in Masai Mara, because that area has thin soils. That area is a grassland, savanna grassland, and therefore you'll find these animals there. Now, poorly drained soils again, which will are waterlogged like clay soils, will attract the growth of papyrus plants. Papyrus plants will only grow in water. Papyrus vegetation grows in papyrus swamps, and they are among the few vegetation that is adapted to waterlogged kind of soils. We continue with the factors. Now, the other factor is vegetation. So different kinds of animals will tend to do well in different forms of vegetation. Now, for instance, birds will live among trees because they construct their houses on trees. So areas that have the thick forest or trees will tend to have more of the birds. Then savanna grasslands, woodlands, will favor giraffes because they have isolated trees, and giraffes with their tall necks will want to feed on this vegetation. So you will find them, for instance, when you go to the Masai Mara, you'll find a lot of giraffes there because these are savanna woodlands. They have these high isolated trees which are favorable for the feeding of giraffes. As we said earlier, desert and semi-desert conditions will favor hardy animals, and also the vegetation that will survive in these conditions must be hardy and adapted to limited water and also limited rainfall and extremely high temperatures. Now, carnivorous animals that hunt, as we have mentioned earlier, they will tend to be found in open grasslands because these are areas where they can hunt effectively, because the areas are open. They can spot their prey from far, and they're able to run in open areas as compared to in forest regions or forested regions. Then insects will tend to do well in areas that are rainforests because of the thick undergrowth. They can be able to survive under these conditions. The other factor is the availability of water. Water of course, will influence the availability of wildlife in different ways. We have marine animals, or animals that live in water, like fish. Fish will only be found in lakes and oceans and water bodies. You'll not find them elsewhere. Then we also have animals like crocodiles and hippos. These are animals that are adapted strictly to fresh water, so you'll find them in freshwater bodies. The last factor that we shall discuss in this section is human activities. We cannot ignore the influence that humans have on this earth, and the influence, the direct or indirect influence that human activities will have on the existence of animals and also plants. Now, poor fishing methods will lead to overexploitation. In the previous topic, we discussed about fishing. We discussed overexploitation of our water bodies. A fish like tilapia is very common among the Kenyan population. You will find that in most lakes like Lake Naivasha and also Lake Victoria, this kind of fish is almost becoming extinct. It has been overfished, and therefore it's facing the risk of not existing at all in those lakes. Now, illegal hunting again will threaten some species. We have seen animals that are almost facing extinction. We have seen the white rhino. The elephants again are endangered because of their ivory. So these human activities like illegal hunting and also poaching, they threaten some species of animals. Now, man is not all that bad. Man can also positively influence existence of wildlife through conservation activities. We have some conservancy, like Pajeta Conservancy. We have the Old Jogi Conservancy in on your way to Doldol. In Laikipia, we also have the conservancy here in Nairobi. All these conservancies are doing a great job in ensuring that animals do not reach a point of extinction by taking them and taking care of them, and that is having a positive influence on the existence of wildlife. Now, the use of chemicals again leads to death of some species of animals and also some species of plants. Now, the issue of use of chemicals was a serious problem, especially around the 1960s, when Rachel Carson wrote a book it called The Silent Spring. Everybody should endeavor to read that, because that is seen as the beginning of the issue of environmentalism. So she was complaining about the indiscriminate use of chemicals. This is the time we had discovered a lot of agricultural activities. We had discovered a lot of chemicals, including the DDT that was later banned. We had also discovered that we can use planes to spray farms, and that indiscriminate kind of spraying was leading to a lot of pollution of soil. Now, if you pollute the soils, we have microorganisms that live in soil. Now, you kill them, birds again, and all manner of things. So she was complaining about that. You should read the book. Now, the other way is human activities again through industrial waste leads to a lot of pollution. This pollution will lead, of course, to killing of some species of animals and also killing of plants. That, of course, reducing wildlife in some areas. Then mining, some mining activities, especially open cast mining, where you are required to clear vegetation so that before you engage in the mining or quarrying activities. So this again leads to destruction of the natural habitats for animals, leading to their reduction. Having looked at that introduction, we will now move to specifically tourism, which will form the bulk of our topic. So what is tourism? Tourism can be defined as the act of traveling, be it for pleasure, be it for business, or even educational purposes. So it should be borne in mind that traveling for pleasure is not the only thing that constitutes tourism. Even when you travel for education or for business, it is still a form of tourism. We also define the term ecotourism. Ecotourism, eco here means environmental. So ecotourism is a kind of tourism that is environmentally friendly, where as you enjoy your tourism activities, you have minimal negative effect on the environment, or you are still taking care of the environment as well. Now, it is characterized by these features. One is that the tourists are guided along marked trails. Tourists are not allowed to veer off the main track that they are following, so that they avoid trampling over grass, which could cause drying or creating too many trails inside the park. Then telescoping viewing of animals is encouraged, where you zoom using a binoculars probably, so that you have minimal disturbance for the animals. You can zoom in using a binoculars and view your animals. Then the use of camping sites rather than building hotels and building any manner of permanent or semi-permanent structures will have a serious effect on the environment. So this act of ecotourism discourages that setting up of hotels. Rather, they encourage camping sites where you just put up a tent, do your tours, and once you are through, then you can pick up your tent and move. So you'll have minimal effect on the natural habitat. Now, only particular vehicles are allowed. We avoid too much pollution, so heavy vehicles or vehicles that will produce a lot of wastes will tend to be discouraged. So we do not use heavy machinery when we are practicing ecotourism. So those are the characteristics of what we are calling ecotourism. Anything that is eco should be encouraged, and every other student that is a good geography student must be a steward and must preach the gospel of taking care of the environment. That we should never forget. So from there we look at types of tourism briefly. Now, one type of tourism is domestic tourism. Domestic tourism is where you are visiting areas within your same country, moving from one area of your country to another area of the same country for tourism. Why do you need to encourage this? One is you are able to appreciate your country. You visit Kenya, you go to the coast from Kisumu or from Turkana County, you see the beauty of this country, and that way you are able to appreciate your own country and even become more patriotic to your country. The other thing is to understand and appreciate conservation. When we move and we see how others are doing conservation, then we learn from them, and we also learn the benefits that people get. If you move to Masai Mara and see the benefits that the people are getting from that park, then you also appreciate that and transfer the same knowledge to your own area. The other one is to compensate for the low seasons. We have low seasons, especially when in April and October. These are low seasons in this country because we do not have a lot of activity will be found in December, when most areas in the northern hemisphere are under winter. So when we do not have international tourists, then we encourage domestic tourists so that we compensate for that season. How do we achieve this? There are two ways we can achieve this, among others, if you are creative enough. One is to lower charges for the local tourists, and I think our government is doing very well in terms of this. If you visit the main national parks of this country, the Nakuru National Park, now here you'll find that an adult will be charged 1,000 shillings. That's the last time I was there. It was just 1,000 shillings. The same place, a person that is not a Kenyan will be charged $8. That's about 8,000. That's 8 times more. So that will encourage you to visit your own country, because the government is also doing you a favor, or it lowers the cost so that it makes it affordable for us. Then you also lower the prices of accommodation for the locals. You don't charge the locals the same. We are in our own country, so do them the favor of charging less so that they can afford and they can actually compensate for that low season. We continue looking at types of tourism, and we look at mass tourism. Mass tourism is some kind of organized tourism where large groups organize some visits somewhere. They could be staff members, they could be students. So an institution organizes a trip in mass. That's what we refer to as mass tourism. Then we have green tourism. Green tourism is where you travel to protect and restore damaged environments. Like when you organize as a group to visit, let's say the Ngong forests, where you go and engage in tree planting activities. We call it green tourism. Then we have international tourism. International tourism is where you move out of your country into another country in search of tourism activity. Briefly, let us look at the factors that influence tourism in Kenya. We have both physical and human factor. In most these topics in Form 4 work, these days the examiners are very specific. So you'll find that they specifically ask for physical or the human factors. So some of the physical factors is our tropical location, being a tropical nation right below the equator. The equator passes right across Kenya, and therefore the better parts of Kenya are relatively warm throughout the year, and therefore there is no single season of the year that tourists cannot enjoy a warm climate in Kenya. Number 2 is attractive sceneries. We have very many sceneries in this country, ranging from the Rift Valley to beautiful mountains to volcanoes to lakes and all manner of attractive sceneries across the country. Then we have a very rich diversity of wildlife, ranging from the big 5 elephants, the buffaloes, the giraffes, the wild beasts, and very many other wide range of animals that cannot be found anywhere else in this world. For the human factors, we have different ethnic groups. We have a diverse array of ethnic groups in this country. Almost or about 42 ethnic communities in this country. All these communities have specific ways of dressing. They have artifacts, they have dances, they have some cultural festivals and all that. So we do not have a scarcity of unique ethnic diversity in this country. Then we have historical sites. Some of the common one, we have the Kariandusi prehistoric site. We shall see that later. That's the Orgesaile. We have Vasco da Gama Pillar at the coast of Kenya. We have the Fort Jesus. We have other historical sites in this country, many of them. Then we enjoy some political stability compared with our region, where we have constant conflicts in most of the East African countries. But Kenya enjoys a relatively stable political ground, and therefore tourists have no fear of visiting this country most of the times. Then we have accessibility. Most of our tourist attractions are accessible. The Rift Valley, for instance, very accessible by excellent roads. We have even built now an expressway from JKIA, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, all the way to Westland, so you have nothing to fear about traffic jams. Most of our sites are also very accessible through air transport. We have very many airstrips. We shall look at them when we'll be looking at transport and communication in a later topic. We have international airports, the JKIA. We have the Moi International Airport in Mombasa. We have Kisumu International Airport. So Kenya is very accessible by road, by rail, by air, and even by ocean. We have the ports of Mombasa, the port of Lamu. These are big sites that can have a big ships. I mean, ships, cruise ships. And lastly, we have world-class hotels, very excellent accommodation for any caliber of tourists. Having looked at the factors that favor tourism in this country, I think it is now pertinent for us to look at the specific tourist attractions in Kenya that make Kenya a tourist destination that is above board in our African continent. So the tourist attractions in Kenya can be divided basically into two. We have the coastal features, those ones that are at the coast, ranging from or all the way extending from Lamu all the way to Mombasa and Kwale and all those coastal towns. There are many. We look at them. One, we have beautiful, natural, uncrowded, unpolluted, sandy beaches, very white beaches at our coasts, which any other person can really enjoy some time there. We have talked about the warm and sunny climate. The coastal parts of Kenya enjoy a warm climate throughout the year, and therefore that attracts tourists. And you can see some of our beaches. This should be Diani Beach at the coast of Kenya. You can see how beautiful that place is when you are resting there. Number two, we have water sports like yachting. We have surfing and sporting activities. So sport fishing, that is. So you can see this is just one example of this is yachting. So some people will go there just for recreational purposes to enjoy yachting, surfing, and also sport fishing. The other thing is historical sites. We have several historical sites at the coast of Kenya. That is one. This is the Gede ruins in Kilifi County. We also have the Vasco da Gama pillar here. These are very old historical sites from the early occupations of the coastal town. This is another historical site. We have the Fort Jesus there. The Fort Jesus is another historical site that was built by the Portuguese. The story about the Fort Jesus can be seen at the bottom end there. It was built by the Portuguese in 1593. Then it was captured by the Arabs in 1698. Then it became a government prison in 1895. Then it was declared a national monument in 1958. Then there was a museum that was built. It is one of the greatest historical sites that you have to visit anytime that you are at the coast of Kenya. The other tourist attraction is the traditional culture of the coastal people. We have talked about a diverse culture, so we have dances from the coastal people. You can see them there. So we have unique foods, we have unique dress codes, we have unique dances, and all manner of culture that you can enjoy at the coast of Kenya. Then we have the mangrove swamps, are also a great tourist attraction. You can see enjoying the coast there with the sunset. And these are some of the mangroves. They grow in water. They are adapted to the salty water. And again, at the mouths of rivers as the river gets into the ocean. So beautiful sceneries at the coasts. So having looked at the those coastal features, then we can move inland and look at some of the attractions that we enjoy in the inland part of Kenya. One, we have the sunny, warm climate, beautiful Kenya with the sunset there. So basically, our country is warm throughout the year, and therefore those people that come from the extreme north and the southern hemisphere, where during winter they are welcome to this country because it is relatively warm and they can enjoy the warmth. Number two is the national parks and game reserves. We have many game parks. We have many national parks and many game reserves, ranging from the Amboseli to the Savo East and Savo West. We have Aberdare National Park. We have the Masai Mara Game Reserve, Lake Nakuru National Park, and we don't have a shortage of game parks in this country. Very many of them beautiful ones. This is Amboseli, a site to visit in this country for those who have not visited. We have the famous wild beasts migration. The famous wild beast migration is there, where the wild beasts cross the river Mara and Serengeti every other year, I think around August. This at one point was declared the 8th wonder of the world, which made it a very famous thing. The only problem we face is the destruction of the Mau water catchment area that is almost drying this river, and as a result the migration, the spectacle in the migration is losing because of the drying of the river, but it's still a great spectacle. You can always visit. We have many attractive sceneries that I had mentioned earlier. We have the Rift Valley, it's a great spectacle in this country. We have numerous lakes, Lake Naivasha, Lake Victoria, Lake Nakuru, Bogoria. We have hot springs, we have mountains, we have all manner of beautiful sceneries in this country. That's the Longonot. What a beauty. So this here is another scenery that we have, a beautiful scenery. This is the Hell's Gate, the gorges there. Just a sample of some of the beautiful sceneries we have in this country, but we have numerous other sceneries ranging from the snow-capped Mount Kenya to mountains to hills and all these manner of beautiful scenery. The other tourist attraction is the diverse culture of the inland people. We have some community there. It should be Maasais. The Ma community, their mode of dressing you can see for yourself. You can see that jump. It's not normally among every other person. This is unique, so that these are some of the things you'll find in the interior or in the inland parts of our country, among other communities, from Kikuyus to Luos to every other person who lives in the inland parts of Kenya. All of them have very diverse culture, very unique methods of dressing, very unique foods, dances, and all the manner of entertainment. Then we have historical attractions. We had talked about this. This is a historical attraction. This is the Kariandusi prehistoric site, or Orgesaile. This one shows the origin of man. We have other historical sites that we boast of in this country. So that's another attraction in the interior or in the inland parts of Kenya. Then we have the National Museums of Kenya is also another tourist attraction. They have many branches. This is the Nairobi one with numerous collections. We have the Kenya National Archives still under the National Museums of Kenya. You will find a lot of history about this country inside these places. We look at the significance of tourism for a country and in general. One is that tourism earns the country substantial foreign exchange. Like in our country, for example, tourism is the leading foreign exchange earner. it is second to none. So we get a lot of money from the tourism sector that is used in the improvement of other sectors of the economy. Secondly, is that the sector directly or indirectly employs many people. We have hoteliers, we have drivers, we have tour guides, and all those manner of people. All of them are employed by this sector and they earn a living from that. Then it's a source of government revenue, especially through taxation. All the people we are saying are employed by this sector definitely pay tax. The hotels will pay licenses. So all this is government revenue that again is used in improving other sectors of the economy. Improvement of transport and communication lines. Any place in this country where we have tourist attractions, the government has to endeavor to ensure that the places are accessible, and therefore you'll find good roads constructed in those areas. Definitely it is no doubt that you'll find Mombasa having an international airport, being a great tourist destination. You'll find Kisumu having an international airport. You'll find even an airport in Isiolo because of that. Promotes international understanding when people visit different countries, especially international trade, not trade but tourism. You get to understand other people's way of life and appreciate them and understand them better, and probably do away with some of the misconceptions that we may think about other people. Then again, it promotes the conservation of wildlife and historical sites. Because of what we are getting, the money that we get through tourism, we use it again to undertake conservation. Again, because we are earning from this sector, then we need to take care of it. That's why we can go to all manner of length to ensure that our white rhino is protected, our elephants are protected, because they earn us money. Then the sector also promotes agriculture. The people that visit need feeding, so the hotels again, they have to source food from the local community, and therefore they promote agriculture again. Then it also promotes the development of other industries, especially the service industries, banking, and other industries like hotel industries. All these are industries that benefit directly from the tourism sector. Let us look at the problems facing tourism in Kenya. One major problem is insecurity. We have areas of our country that are very insecure, and even in areas that we think we have secured, we have problems as well. Including in Nairobi, we have normal insecurity issues, and in Mombasa we also have the same problems. But then we have a lot of insecurity in parts of Baringo, we all understand. So this one discourages people from visiting such areas. Nobody wants to risk their life. Now the only solution to this problem is increasing security patrols to ensure that our tourists are safe and they feel safe being in our country. Secondly is ethnic clashes in tourist attraction areas. Parts of the Rift Valley, I've mentioned about Baringo region. We have Lake Baringo there, which is a tourist attraction, but nobody wants to be in an insecure area or where people are involved in clashes. And the solution to this problem is, of course, preaching peace, so that we have all parts of this country being peaceful. Illegal hunting and poaching of animals is another problem. Now, if all our big five animals, the rhino, the elephant, these are high risk animals, they are at risk of elimination because of illegal hunting and poaching. Now, if we do not have these big five in future, then our tourism sector will be in serious jeopardy. Now, as a solution, then we need to inspect tourists on departure to avoid the issue of exporting of ivory, because that is what promotes the issue of poaching. If people don't have a market for these products, then they would not be there in the market. But because some tourists are involved in the business of transporting them out of the country, then that is what is leading to a lot of illegal hunting, which puts a risk to our tourism sector. Then terrorist attacks. Now, terrorism, we had sometimes back in Mombasa, we had an airplane that was missed by a Stinger missile in Kikambala. That airplane was carrying tourists. Now, if we have such a situation, then we will discourage tourism a lot. Now, even before then, before we went into war in Somalia, it was because tourists were being hijacked in Kenya. They were being kidnapped and taken to Somalia, and that is what led to our country getting into war in Somalia. So such terrorism acts and other attacks that we have had in especially the former northeastern province, of course they lead to, or they beat a blow to our tourism sector, and we need to counter that. And I think that our government has done well in trying to control tourism. We have a counter-terrorism squad. We have tried to secure our borders, and we have not heard of serious cases of terrorism in the recent past. We have the issue of pollution of aquatic waters or aquatic systems, rivers, especially lakes, like a good lake Nakuru and most of the Rift Valley lakes. Most of them are majorly polluted, and that leads, of course, to the death of flamingos, which are a major tourist attraction, especially in Lake Nakuru. Of course, the issue of pollution, the solution to this issue of pollution is controlling pollution through legislation and ensuring that laws that exist are enforced, and that way I think we can deal with that issue. We have the issue of high airfares. I think we are in one country where the price of fuel in this country is extremely high. Of course, that discourages people, especially international tourists, from visiting when the airfares are way too high. Then we have negative international media publicity. This is a serious problem, and I'll show you, I think, in the next slide some of the messages that we have received which have discouraged a lot of tourism. And of course, we should encourage promotion so that people don't think that Kenya is an active war zone. We are a peaceful country. We live peacefully. So sometimes, especially the international media that does not understand what is really happening in our country, think that because we border Somalia or because we have incidences of terrorism, we have insecurities. These are just isolated cases which are normal in every other country of the world. So these tourism bodies will ensure that people have a different picture of our country. Now in this slide, I show you some of the messages from renowned international media houses. The first one there at the top is CNN. This was the time that Obama was supposed to visit Kenya, and you can see the headline on CNN: "Security fears as Obama heads to terror hotbed." Now when people hear about this, or hear that Kenya is a terror hotbed, then you don't expect people to visit a terror hotbed. So these are some of the negative media publicity that we are talking about. In the second one there, you can see the Pope himself, very surprised. Pope visits what on Africa. At the same time, the Pope was visiting Kenya, among other countries, from a renowned media outlet, Fox News, talking about a war on Africa. So you would imagine that Kenya is an active war zone with bombs throughout. Now we are a peaceful country. We are one of the most peaceful countries, and I've mentioned that we may have issues of insecurity, but those are just isolated cases. that are very rare. Otherwise, the better part of this country is very peaceful. So these are some of the things that discourage or the the tourism sector faces. Very fast, we move on to the problems that are associated with the tourism. Here we are talking about issues that have arose because of the tourism, or as tourism improves, then we have some issues that arise. One is the issue of drug trafficking. It is not everybody who is out to just tour our beautiful country. There are some who are out on another mission of trafficking drugs, which of course is having a tall order on our people, especially at the coast. The presence of tourists also attract crimes. We have seen many incidences of like the Kikambala bombing. We had tourists who are being abducted by the Al-Shabaab before we went into Somalia. So the presence of these tourists is what brings the terrorism part. Then immoral activities. We have a lot of immoral activities that have been introduced to the African society by tourists, like the mode of dressing, some behaviors, pornography, child pornography, and all manner of crimes have come up because of tourism. Otherwise, in our African society, the moral standing was not that much as it is now. The erosion of social morals. We have this one is related to the others. We have the modes of dressing, some behaviors that we have adopted. These are things that never existed in our African society, but they are now there. The high rate of school dropouts, because people can get some cash by just going and becoming self-employed tour guides, by robbing, by engaging in all other manner of business. So you'll find areas of the coast or areas where we have some tourism, we have high rates of dropout. And anywhere else that children can get cash, then dropouts from school is high. Interference of the animals' way of life. We were not meant to be of nuisance to animals, but because human beings hold themselves higher and they feel that they have a higher place in this world as compared to animals, then we interfere with their way of life. Otherwise, they were supposed to exist in their natural habitat without disturbance. It also encourages the issue of poaching, and I've said especially where many tourists are involved in the act of sneaking out poached products like ivory, then that encourages the poachers to continue because they have a market for their products. Then it also encourages environmental pollution, people in the park and dropping plastics and all manner of things in the parks. That of course leads to pollution. And then worse off is that the government neglects other sectors of the economy. In the 1990s, we had what we call structural adjustment programs, or the SAPs. Now, these ones were encouraged by IMF and World Bank, where we were not supposed to, the government were not supposed to invest in non-productive sectors of the economy, like education and healthcare. So governments ended up investing heavily on these productive sectors like tourism and forget other sectors of the economy because the tourism is paying back. Now, from there we'll move on to our case study. I had mentioned earlier that in this topic, our case study will be Switzerland. So we look at tourism in Switzerland. Now, that is Switzerland, the location of Switzerland, bordered by Italy, Austria, Germany, and France. And then you can see their flag there, the cross, and you can see some landscapes in that great country called Switzerland. Now, just a small fact about Switzerland. One is that it's the leading international tourist destination. and that's why we are interested in knowing what they are doing better than us to be the leading tourist destination in the world. It is located in Central Europe. We have looked at that location. The country is landlocked with no access to the ocean. 60% of the country is mountainous. It is about 41,285 square kilometers in size, with a population of just about 8.5 million as compared to a population of almost 50 million. It is also the headquarters of the World Trade Organization, the WHO or World Health Organization, the International Labour Organization, and FIFA. So which factors have made Switzerland a leading destination for tourists as compared to our country here? The beautiful scenery of the Alps. The Alps are located in this country. Now they are snowy, they are covered by snow, and that's a major tourist attraction in that country. The climate, especially towards the south, the area towards the southern parts of Europe is closer to the tropics, and therefore, and again because of the moderating effect of the Mediterranean Sea, so that area is relatively warmer as compared to the north, and which is a little bit cold or very cold. Skiing and skating during winter is also another tourist attraction in that country, which we don't have in our country. Excellent infrastructural facilities. This is one of the first world countries which, if we compare to ourselves, is a developing nation. So they have excellent infrastructure, roads, air facilities, and all that, and hotels as well. The policy of neutrality. For a long time, Switzerland, I don't know whether they took a stand this time on the Ukraine war, but the neutrality policy we are talking about here, during the Second World War, some countries decided that they will remain neutral. They were never supposed to lean towards the West or the side of the USSR. So they remained neutral, and that neutrality policy makes it favorable for both people from the West and from the other side. And I think Switzerland is just one country whose neutrality policy is entrenched in their constitution, and I think that has helped them a lot in being in coherence with every other kind of nation globally. The other countries like Finland and Finland, and I don't know which this other country is, they have decided to take sides. Some of Finland and other countries remained neutral, but after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia recently last year, or what Russia calls special military intervention, then some of these countries have decided to lean towards the West, and they are now joining NATO and the European Union. I don't know whether Switzerland remains neutral. Now, this country also enjoys major languages. The main languages used here, they have English, they have French, they have Romansh. These are some of the languages that are used in this country, and of course that makes it favorable for all kinds of people who understand these languages. Accessibility from all sides because of its central location in Central Europe. Excellent accommodation. Being a first world country, then accommodation is above par. The affluent population inside the country itself, Switzerland, and even the neighbors you can see, they are Germany, Austria. All these are countries that are rich per se, and therefore can afford tours or tourism or touring that country. Then we have it is also the center for many international bodies. We have talked about WTO, WHO, FIFA, ILO, being a headquarter for all these international bodies. Then that means there are many conferences that are held here, international conferences, which of course bring in tourists. Then there is also organized tourism in this country, of course, which helps people. Sometimes it can be very difficult to go on a tour alone, but when it is organized in groups, then you pool resources and make it affordable, and that is common in that country. Then favorable banking laws. I think this is the only country. This country has some of the best laws, and therefore many people will go to that country on business trips to bank their money, because the Switzerland government will not disclose your accounts by any means, and I think it has the best banking laws together with the Vatican. Now that allows many people, or it favors many people, to deposit their money there, and of course as they do that, then they visit the country. Then it has the lowest crime rates in the world, and of course that makes it an attractive tourist destination. Now we look at significance of tourism to Switzerland. Just like Kenya, they will be the same things. One, earns the country foreign exchange, which of course is reinvested in other sectors of the economy. Then the country earns revenue, that's the same as our country, of course, through taxation. Creates employment to its citizens, and of course employment comes with improvement of living standards. Development of other sectors is the same as our country. Of course, we have talked about the hotel industries, the banking sector, and other industries. Then it has opened up unproductive areas for development, especially towards the north, which we have said are extremely cold. But because of these, the Alps and the tourism in the Alps, the land becomes productive per se. Then Switzerland has gained good international reputation. We said one thing is that when tourists visit, then you gain the confidence of other people. Now we compare Kenya and Switzerland in terms of similarities. Now both countries have similar tourist attractions. We have said the snow-capped mountains. In Kenya we have Mount Kenya. In Switzerland we have the Alps. Well-established hotel industries. We have 5-star hotels in Kenya. Even if ours may not necessarily match the Switzerland, but we have world-class hotels in both countries. And I remind the students to mention that it is in both countries. You are comparing. Then both countries have health spas. We have the health spas at Bogoria. We have one in Naivasha as well, the hot springs. That water is believed to have healing powers, of course, because the water is rich in many minerals. So when people clean with that water, it is believed to have some healing powers, or it's good for the skin. And I think we have a health spa at Olkaria in Switzerland. We also have it at Mount Moritz. Now tourists will visit throughout the year. In Kenya it is because it is warm throughout the year, so tourists can visit throughout the year. In Switzerland, tourists will visit when it is warm in winter, in summer, especially towards the south, which we have said because of the moderating effect of the Mediterranean Sea, then it tends to be warmer. And then during winter they will also visit for winter games. Then tourism is a significant income earner for both countries. In Kenya we have said it is the leading. In Switzerland we have said it's also, tourism is a major sector in that country. Then both countries enjoy peaceful political environment. We have said while we may not match Switzerland with Kenya, But Kenya is also relatively peaceful. Switzerland is also, we have said the crime rates there are extremely low. Both countries have national parks. Ours has, we may have more, but both countries have national parks in general. To end up on this case study, let us look at the differences between tourism in Kenya and tourism in the Switzerland. One is that Kenya has more physical features as compared to Switzerland. In Kenya, we have talked about the Great Rift Valley and numerous mountains, lakes, and all that. In the Switzerland, we have only seen the Alps. Kenya is a tropical country and therefore experiences high temperatures throughout the year, as compared to Switzerland, which is in the temperate region that experiences both winter and summer. Kenya has tropical wildlife. Being in the tropical region, we have tropical wildlife ranging from elephants to buffaloes to gazelles to leopards to all manner of tropical wildlife and even plants. Switzerland has none of that because, of course, it is not in the tropics. Then Kenya is richer in terms of traditional culture. We have more than 40 different cultural groups with different and unique cultures. Switzerland has none of that. Then Switzerland receives more visitors than Kenya for reasons that we have seen earlier. And Switzerland is the leading country in terms of tourism, so definitely they receive more visitors as compared to Kenya. Then Kenya has marine attractions. Switzerland does not have, simply because it is a landlocked country, as mentioned earlier. Then Kenya has national parks, many of them, and game reserves. In Switzerland, as in most developed countries, normally they keep the animals in zoos because most of the areas have been urbanized and therefore they hardly have national parks. Then Switzerland has winter sports. Kenya has no winter and therefore has no winter sports altogether. Then Switzerland has more of domestic tourism, of course, because of an affluent population. In Kenya, domestic tourism is limited. Now, why is domestic tourism limited in this country? This is a question that you may find. Why Kenyans rarely visit places? One is shortage of accommodation, especially during the peak season. During this peak season, we are concentrating on international arrivals, and therefore accommodation becomes expensive and there is a shortage altogether. Unemployment is a problem in our country. Being a third world country, not many people are employed and therefore not many people can afford to visit. Then the low income, even for the employed people, income is a problem. We survive on basic needs, so a person earning or living between hands and mouth has nothing to spare for tourism. Then we have employees who are unable to get leave. We have people working throughout from Monday to Sunday, and therefore they cannot even get the leave to visit places. Then the habit just lacks. We are not used to that issue, or we are not used to being tourists, simply said. End up this topic by looking at the future of tourism in Kenya. We could say that the future looks bright because of the efforts that the government is putting up that we shall look at in this section. One is improvement of infrastructure, especially roads, and in the marginal areas. Remember, there are very many parts of this country that are very marginalized, and the government is trying to build numerous roads to try and open up more areas for tourism activities. There is aggressive promotion of the tourism sector by the Kenya Tourist Board, Magical Kenya, and other people who are trying to just market Kenya as a tourist destination. There's encouragement of domestic tourism through mass campaigns, through lowering of entry fees into parks, so that we encourage that, so that when we have the downtime, or when we have the off-peak season, then we can rely on domestic tourism. Then there's beefing up of security, especially in areas where we have tourism activities taking place, so that tourists feel safe. Then we have the lowering of tariffs levied particularly on food and accommodation, so that we can make it more affordable for the tourists. And that is the end of our topic. Thank you very much for your time. Kindly do not forget to subscribe and keep checking for more content that is upcoming. Thank you.